and look at Hinduism in regards to creation. In your textbook, did anyone see any detailed stories about what the Hindus believe in relationship to how the world was created? Was there any sacred story about some deity creating the world or anything akin to that you remember reading? All right, the answer is no. So if you're trying to think, I don't remember, but I don't want to say that because obviously there must have been. No, there wasn't. There are two different ideas generally attributed to creation, but one of them really isn't a notion of creation of the world, but rather the creation of the caste system. In that version, you have this divine entity, Purusha. And this supreme entity, Purusha, essentially sacrifices itself to create existence. More specifically, parts of Purusha become the different parts of the caste system. Most notably, the lips of Purusha become the Brahmin, the priests. At the end of the day, though, that story doesn't really tell us about the creation of the world. When, how, who created the world. Interestingly, from the same Vedas that tells the story of Purusha, we have another story that takes a different look at creation. It states, who knows it for certain? Who can proclaim it here? Namely, out of what it was born, and wherefrom his creations issued. The gods appeared only later, after the creation of the world. Who knows then out of what it has evolved? What is this telling us? What do we learn from this excerpt?
Comes from nothing.
Possibly. But they're not sure. They're not sure. It could come from nothing. But we can't be certain. The gods appeared later, which means all of the various gods and goddesses, Vishnu, Shiva, Devi, they weren't the creators of the world or the creators of the existence. Brahman's not even necessarily mentioned. In describing Hinduism, we can use those words, monism, pantheism, henotheism. But in regards to looking at specific questions of ultimate concern, we can include agnosticism. When it comes to the question, how the world was created, the response is one that would be agnostic. We do not know. It could be this way, it could be another way. But we weren't there. We don't know. And also, it doesn't matter. Knowing how the world was created is not an important question for Hindus. Religious, philosophical, or general spiritual Hindus, it's not an important question. It could be the Big Bang. That doesn't impact their sacred notions. What about birth and death of humans? What is the destiny there? Well, somewhat similarly, the individual has no known beginning. The cycles of lifetimes are determined by karma. They are unlimited by species, by world. Essentially, a person continues to be born, to die, and be reborn again. Exactly how humans came into existence, we don't know if we're looking at it from the Hindu perspective. There's no specific story saying that one particular entity evolved or one particular entity came and created mankind. If you delve deeply into Hinduism, you might find a few ideas in the Vedas, but generally speaking, somehow it's determined by karma. More specifically, karma determines a person's rebirth. Now, this cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, what is it called? Wheel of Samsara. What is the ultimate goal in relationship to that wheel of Samsara? Moksha. What is moksha? It's liberation and freedom. There are some who might attempt to translate moksha into a concept of heaven. In the Essentials of Faith video, there is a man who mentions how it's akin to the highest heaven, Vaikuntha. But even then, he's talking about the highest heaven, Vaikuntha. He's not talking about moksha. Moksha is not heaven. It's liberation or freedom from the wheel of samsara. Some will say, well, moksha is akin to a sense of enlightenment. One can become enlightened on the path towards moksha, but enlightenment does not always guarantee the experience of freedom and liberation from the wheel of samsara. A person who's enlightened might still be born again.
Does the wheel of samsara, does it have anything to do with the Indian flag?
Not entirely. Ever slightly different. So, our ultimate goal is moksha. Get off the wheel of samsara. But in the process of getting to that point, there are many other worlds and dimensions that Hindus believe exist. And sometimes there is a hierarchy to those dimensions. It's said that it's better to be a human than to be an animal. It's better to be an animal than a plant. But different schools of thought in Hinduism might categorize those variances, categorize them in different ways. Then you have the concept that there are also heavens and hells. A hell might be a place, a world, a realm of existence where a person goes as a result of negative karma, as a result of not following their dharma. Heaven can be a reward for proper karma, for following their dharma, or, as mentioned when we discussed history, a reward for dying or being cremated in Varanasi. Heaven could be a reward. Heaven can be a reward for those who practice bhakti marga, bhakti yoga. In the Gita, there's a mention that if Arjuna follows proper dharma, karma, and bhakti devotion to Lord Krishna, he can be granted entry into heaven. Often, though, heaven is seen, similarly to hell in a way, as temporary, because it's not moksha, it's not that complete final destination or final experience. We are going to talk about the books in the next class, with the exception of one thing about the Upanishads, which we will mention towards the end of this class. So we're going to go forward into practices and actions. And there's a question, what is that general expectation? Now simply say from the PowerPoint here, it mentions to overcome our egos, understand Dharma related to our personal and social relationships, and to live a life worthy, with worthy goals, following our marga or yoga. If you turn to page 138 in the textbook, I would like somebody to read the statement of how should we live in this world.
Powerfully attracted to the samsaric realm of particulars, our egotistic selves, our relationships, our possessions, and the seemingly countless objects of our desires, we are caught up in the continual cycle of death and rebirth. Hinduism prescribes living in a manner that moves the self towards liberation from samsara. Three paths, margas or yogas, lead to moksha, karma, action. Jnana, knowledge, and bhakti, devotion. All the while, Hindus are required to live in conformity with Dharma, upholding the cosmic and social order.
Next class, we'll delve into some of the specific types of activities a person can do, certain individual rituals, because we have a group that's working on it. But in regards to the yogas, I want to go ahead and discuss them. In the textbook, it mentions three main yogas in its description there at the end. However, within the text itself, it does clarify that there are four primary and upwards of six. This is located on page 129, where it mentions yoga is sometimes used instead of marga to designate any one of three great paths one can take in the pursuit of moksha. Yoga is also used more narrowly as the name of one of the six schools of philosophy. But then if you move earlier, you also will see descriptions of these three main. So we're going to talk about these three main forms of yoga, and then we'll mention this fourth form that is barely touched upon in the book. So what is Jnana yoga? You need a page number to look at. You can look at second page 100 for Jnana yoga. Anyone, what is Jnana yoga?
Study of sacred texts and meditation.
It says, there is nothing on earth equal in purity to wisdom. He who becomes perfected by yoga finds this of himself in his Atma in course of time. So what do you think Jnana yoga is? What is it about? How do we perform Jnana yoga? Good. Through sacred texts, through reading, through studying, through critical, analytical, reflective thought. Being able to take a single excerpt, single sentence even, from the Vedas or from the Puranas or from the Upanishads or from the Gita, the Mahabharata, Ramayana, etc. And see that sentence as a message of divine wisdom. To understand it in all of its manners, its definition, its application. At the beginning of the semester, I mentioned there are four orientations of religion. One of those orientations was prophetic. The idea of to study and to know and apply it through ethic and moral. So that would be what Jnana yoga does. The idea of scholarship, philosophizing. And what about karma yoga? It's on page 99. Yoga of action. What does that mean? Relinquishing attachment, men of discipline perform action with body, mind, understanding, and senses for the purification of the self. Relinquishing the fruit of action, the disciplined man attains perfect peace. The undisciplined man is in bondage, attached to the fruit of desire. What is important or key to karma yoga?
Basically, if you do, it's just like karma. If you, based on your actions, that will determine.
That would be karma, but karma yoga is ever so slightly different.
Is it like fully committing to your dharma?
Partially, dharma can play an important part. What does it mean to not be tied to the fruits of your labor? When you do something not because of what you'll get out of it. Selflessness. Unselfish. In the Gita, Arjuna is told he is a member of the warrior caste. He has a dharma, a responsibility. He must do that responsibility. But he cannot be attached to the fruits of his labor. What this means for a warrior, you cannot go into battle so that you can then rape and pillage all the people that you take power over. You cannot go into battle with the hopes of being sung as a glorious hero for time immemorial. Can't go into battle to get rich. You have to go because it is the proper thing to do. You have to go because of a sense of duty and responsibility for that which is right and honorable. A doctor cannot become a doctor, or a lawyer cannot become a lawyer because they're going to make good money or make a name for themselves and attain notoriety. They have to do it for worthy causes. They have to do it because it's their responsibility, because it's what's right to do. So karma yoga isn't just the notion of what karma is. It's about the actions that we take and ensuring that we perform those actions in a way that is geared away from selfishness, away from the ego. All right, Bhakti Yoga is talked about the most in the book, so I'm sure somebody can give me a description of what Bhakti Yoga is. Exactly, devotion to a deity. The idea that in what you do, you are expressing love, devotion, reverence, worship of a deity. Do this through puja, homage, performing party perhaps. Bhakti Yoga goes a little bit further though. It's not just devotion to the deity, but living the life of one who would be held most dear by that deity. So if you want to perform bhakti devotion to Durga, it would mean that in your own life, you would seek to be that being of, divine compassion and light and love in your own life. The fourth form of yoga, Raja Yoga, or the royal marga, the royal path. Usually it has 8 to 12 steps, depending on the school of thought. And it's geared more, if we think about those orientations, to the mystical. It's geared towards a person who might be seeking moksha, who is a sannyasi. We'll mention what a sannyasi is later. It's the path of meditation, mindfulness, includes meditation such as control of the breath, jhana, includes control of the mind, the senses, includes deeper meditation using different asanas, most commonly the lotus position. All four of these yogas are said to be paths that will lead you towards Brahman, to the ultimate. Whether you might seek that ultimate via Shiva or Vishnu or any of the other deities. Further, these four margas or yogas are seen as paths that also lead you towards that summit of moksha, or liberation and freedom. There are two other yogas that are common. One of them is the yoga that we are extremely common, that is extremely common here in the United States, Hatha yoga. So what is Hatha yoga? Anyone have any thoughts? What does it focus on?
Your body.
The body. You go to a yoga studio, they're going to have you do sun salutation and warrior and down dog and cat and all these different positions known as asanas. It's considered the yoga of force. Now, mind you, it's not just stretching, it's not calisthenics, and it's sacred form. In the concept of yoga being a sacred path, Hatha yoga is there to help train the mind and the body so that one might perform the four main yogas or four main paths better. Because to truly embrace and practice the various forms of Hatha yoga, you have to be aware of your breath control. You have to be aware of the abilities of your body. You have to learn what the different asanas are. So it helps with clearing the mind and the body, which also includes ideas of Ayurvedic medicine, the idea of balancing different energies that exist in the body. When it comes to energies, there is another type of yoga, often connected with tantric Hinduism, or more mystical ideas of Hinduism, Kundalini yoga. So Kundalini believes that, or in Kundalini yoga, there's a focus on the belief in chakras. According to traditional Hindu ideas, there are 7 chakras. Each chakra has its own color, each chakra has its own stones and sounds and even verses that are said to be connected with it. Each chakra is positioned in a different part of the body, going from the root chakra all the way up to the crown chakra at the top of the head. The belief is, as you generate negative karma, as you sway away from your dharma, as natural disturbances or unnatural disturbances impact you and your life, there can be blockages in each of these energy centers, in these chakras. By using different asanas, hatha yoga, by incorporating ideas at times of jnana or bhakti or karma or raja yoga, one can employ various techniques in order to clear each of these energy centers, eventually waking what's called the divine serpent or the kundalini. To do that is essentially to reach a state of enlightenment, an awareness of the divine. Now, in life, according to Hinduism, there are 4 main goals. Based on your reading of the textbook in these 4 main goals, are any of them considered negative? Yes? No? Well, asked differently then. A person who has immense wealth, a lot of money, and has immense power at the same time, is that person inherently good, inherently bad, or just having wealth and power, those two things alone, is that able to tell you whether the person is good or bad? Why?
Because wealth and power, and you can come about both of those in different ways, good and evil, or bad.
It's how the person gets to that point. It's how the person uses that money or that gold. So, for instance, and if you want, this is on page 105. It mentions these different aims of life. You have, for instance, two aims of life, Kama and Artha. Apply especially to the second stage of life, that the householder. We'll come to those stages here in a moment. Kama is directed at the fulfillment of desire. It encourages Hindus to enjoy the human experience and celebrates essential aspects of life. Artha, the pursuit of wealth and social prestige, is also encouraged. It is Hindus' duty to provide security for loved ones, but also to savor and share life's bounty. Of course, Kama and Artha must conform to one's dharma. And you could add to that sentence, it also must be done in accordance with karma. And in particular, you could even imply the idea of karma yoga. In the sense that a person who has great wealth, how did they get it? Did they get it through proper means? Or what are they doing with it? Are they using it to help others or only to help themselves? Interestingly, one can even look at your dharma and ask whether or not you are practicing karma in relationship to your dharma. Are you doing your duty simply because it's your duty, or are you doing it out of some type of egoistic need or desire? With liberation and freedom, odd as it may sound, one can ask the question, why are you seeking liberation and freedom? Are you seeking it in such a way that you are not able to perform your dharma? Are you obtaining it in ways that might be harming others? And so none of these four goals is inherently good or inherently bad. It's all about karma and dharma and the overall balance in the Hindu life. Now, it mentioned these four stages in life. These four stages match up essentially around the world. When you are a student, what do you think is expected of you? To get good grades. So that means probably to study, to learn both your social skills, your reading, writing, arithmetic skills, and your religious knowledge. Eventually, you will finish college, though. What do you want to do at that point? What would be your goals? Anyone want to have a career? Anyone want to get married or have kids? Well, those are the goals, the dharma, the duties and responsibilities of the household. To have a career, to have a spouse, to raise children. Now, in this sense of the word, that these four stages of life are considered sacred stages. In the notion that dharma, similar to Immanuel Kant's view that religion is seeing all of our activities, all of our duties as divine commands, you have the notion here that your employment, your job, can be seen as part of your sacred responsibility, your sacred duty, as can raising kids. Now, eventually your kids are going to get older. Your responsibilities will change once more. Because what do you think you want to do after so many years of working and your kids are now out of school? You want to retire. You might want to travel, you might want to do something else, but you are finished with the householder stage of your life. Hinduism has generally two different paths for this retiree, or what's sometimes referred to as the forest dweller stage of life. As a forest dweller, traditionally a man might choose to go out and live similar to a hermit out in the woods, or seek to try and delve deeper into one of the forms of yoga. It wasn't that yoga wasn't important during the householder stage, but there was other types of dharma that took priority. Now in the retirement stage, similar to that student stage, you can go back in and delve into the different paths, the different teachings. The other concept is that rather than becoming a forest dweller, you will live with your kids. Now, usually it was, I could just say, well, outside of the US. Unfortunately now, more and more countries have followed the US example. But for the most part in India, family is still extraordinarily important. You may end up living in the same house as your parents, your grandparents, and if they're alive, even your great-grandparents. The concept of taking an elderly person and shipping them off to some retirement community in Sun City Center or elsewhere would be considered reprehensible. It would be wrong to do that. Family is supposed to stay close together. Just as the parents took care of their parents, and the parents took care of you for 15 to 20 years, now you take their place, taking care of them, while also beginning to take care of your kids. Now this doesn't mean that the parents in this retiree stage don't have responsibilities. The retiree is supposed to be an example of what it means to be a practicing Hindu. They're supposed to demonstrate what a proper life is. They're supposed to teach, meaning they're supposed to help take care of the grandkids while the parents work. They're supposed to be out in the community being actively involved in bringing the community together, helping with rituals. Now for some, their ultimate goal is moksha, and rather than going through these stages, perhaps it's after the householder stage, or even perhaps after the student stage, they become a sannyasi. I do want you to know that term sannyasi. A sannyasi or sannyasin is essentially a monk. This is a person who has renounced their worldly possessions and worldly connections. Historically, there were even ceremonies that were occasionally done by families as a member of the family went off to join an ashram, the religious community in Hinduism, the ashram, because that person was no longer brother or son or father, but rather was becoming this religious entity, the sannyasi. Today, people might not be sannyasis for life. I have a friend who is a yoga master and Ayurvedic practitioner and teaches different courses, specifically throughout Florida, but also in a few other states. He was a sannyasi, lived in an ashram for about 3 years when he finished what we would call high school. He then decided he wanted to go ahead and get married. So he left the ashram, found a wife, came to Florida, got married, has 2 kids. The daughter is in her final year of college, and his son is either in his last year of high school or first year of college. I think he started college this semester. And his original view was that as soon as his children graduated high school, he was going to go back to India. Now it stands that once his daughter adequately, according to him, adequately takes over his business, then he will leave and go back to India and go back to the ashram and become a sannyasi for the remainder of his life. His wife will continue to live probably with their daughter here in the States. So today it's possible that you can become a sannyasi and then leave the ashram and then maybe come back later. This is a relatively new ability. When a family has a member become a sannyasi, it brings great blessings to that family. All right, one last thing that I want to mention today, and as I said, it's from one of the texts, and it's from the Upanishads, and it's specifically this concept of Maya, or illusion. So, Maya or illusion is used in different ways, and it stands for different things throughout time periods in Hindu thought. It implies the concept of deception that relates to our dream state versus our waking state. In some parts of Raja or royal yoga, one delves into the consciousness and the aspect of Maya that is our dreaming and our waking state. The idea that you actually know when you're dreaming, even if you don't think you know that you're dreaming, your dreaming self knows. But because you're not always aware of that, sometimes you can think that when you're dreaming, you're actually awake. You know, a dream that's so realistic that when you wake up, you're not sure if you're now in the dream or if you were in the dream. So it's that idea of being able to recognize that difference. Another aspect of Maya is the deceptions that we can come across in our daily lives. Driving on the interstate, you think you see water on the road up ahead, but it is a mirage. It's just the heat coming off the road. You wake up in the morning, you're just waking up, and you happen to glance out the window, and it looks like there's a big snake outside your front door. You take a few deep breaths, you're kind of anxious, you're like, okay, I'm going to take care of that, I got to have my coffee. And so you have your coffee, and you grab something, you're going to either kill it or you're going to make that snake go away. You open the door closely, getting ready to do something, and you take a look, and you're like, wait a minute, that's not a snake, it's a coiled up rope, or a coiled up hose. That idea that sometimes even objects we see aren't actually what we see. When a person or a kid looks up at the sky and says, look, there's a turtle. Is there a turtle in the sky? Probably not. It's probably a cloud. Now, if you're at a parade, it could be a teenage Ninja Turtle balloon or something, but generally speaking, it's a cloud. Maya also goes to helping us understand the ability to have mind over matter. Some Buddhist scholars, including Siddhartha, commented how the Brahmins could employ this idea of illusion to control. But it also can be used not just to control, but to enable a person to control the view of the world they have, having control over one's own mind and body. So I'm going to give you a very brief example of this, and I want everyone to do this. I want you to wake up and do this because it's interesting. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Of 12 students, at least 5 or so of you should find this really interesting. Maybe more. Sometimes it's up to 3/4. What I'm about to show you, it works really well with kids, with people who have good active imaginations, and it also is really good to use on somebody if you happen to be out in an Ybor on a Friday night, perhaps. Drinking a little or something. So, First thing, your hands may have been in one position for a while, so shake out your hands. I stretch them just a little bit. Now, I do want everyone doing this. You will notice at the base of your hand, there are creases. Match up the crease from the right and left hand. Bring your hands together. You will notice that one hand has a couple fingers that are shorter than the other hand. If you're unsure, shake them out, do it again. This isn't about me fooling you so much. The hand that has the shorter fingers, hold it in front of your face. You gotta do this out loud, so I want to hear the responses. Look at it and say, grow longer.
Grow longer.
Say, grow longer.
Grow longer.
Flick the center of the hand, and then holding it to where it's like super big compared to the other one, say, you are longer. Now, match the lines up and bring your hands together. For how many people are their fingers now the same length, or the ones that are shorter is now longer? One of those two. Show of hands, I want to see how many. Looks like 5 or 6. So yeah, about 5 or 6 people. The more you tell them to say that, the better the result will be. You can do the same thing, have the person stand up, twist around, tell them to shake out their body so that, not because they weren't stretched out, shift around, and then tell them to look at it to see what would it be like if their hand matched up only about 6 inches further than it had been as far as, on the board, what would be about 6 inches. Then tell them to shift. They will actually go more than that 6 inches. You can do the same thing with touching your toes. Even a person who can't easily touch their toes is more likely to be able to come close to, if not touch their toes. You do it by telling them to stretch as if they're trying to. Now, mind you, if a person's really good at touching their toes, then you could say, putting their whole hand down in front of their feet. And then you tell them to get down and feel what the ground feels like, so that they know what feeling they should have when their hand touches the ground. Then you tell them to bend over, and sure enough, they'll be able to do it. It's a technique that can come under the concept of Maya, with mind over matter. It also shows up even in our tribal religions with this ability to take on great control of spirit. At times you have fire walking, so walking on hot coals. In southern India, there's a ritual called Nagpachami, which is a snake dancing ritual, which incorporates that same idea of having power or control over that which is around us. So speaking of having control and power, you have about 5-10 minutes to work as a group on those questions from last week. Hold on to them though. On Thursday, each group will be expected to share the answers, the details.
Oh, we turned it so we're not turning it in?
Not today. We're turning it in Thursday.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. So yours was the sacred text. You just have a whole bunch of sacred texts. That's why it was one question. Most groups had 2 questions. Yours just this one because your question involves so many different things.
I wrote down a step for puja. I don't remember what the other one was. Diwali. I think Diwali.
You will, tonight you will see the section 1 total points. Well, right now we only know section 1, so you should only be concerned with the grade is for section 1, which once I post the total points tonight, you will see how many points you have for section 1. Ideally, you will have, If you're aiming for an A, you should have at least 176 points for section 1. Of course, if you're only aiming for a B, I think it's 166 or 156.
So you're like
And technically, you could add these points on your own, but to make it easy, I post up what your section points totals are.
on the quizzes.
Yeah, and including those points for the test.
Really?
For experiences in New Zealand.
I think that's
So between now and the end of the semester, you could go to St. Pete Museum of Fine Art and get 25 points for Tribal America and 25 points for Tribal Africa. Or you could go to St. Lands Preservation, or you could go to the Woodland Park, or
I
Tampa
think it's really good or like
Museum.
not at all.
So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different places, so that'd be 125 points for experiences for section 1. And there are other tribal experiences in the Tampa Bay area too. Oh yeah, there's Green Island. So 6 would be 150. Those would be for experiences. Many groups have been due already. Experiences you can still do. Probably, yeah, you can get 100 points for experiences from section 1 between now and the end of the semester, relatively easily. Yeah, you should actually get all 107. You could get enough, you could do 200. Yeah, because you also have the one Native American, or I'm sorry, tribal African exhibit that's in St. Pete, the museum. So St. Pete Museum of Fine Art, Tampa Museum, Tampa Bay History Museum, Rita Island, Sacred Lands Preservation, Philippi Park. There's others. You could find one more and get all 200 points for section 1. Just doing experiences. But no one in this class needs 200 points for section 1. Even the students who have stopped attending wouldn't even need 200 points for section 2. Most, even people who stopped attending usually have at least 20 or 30 points already. So they could visit fewer number of places and still get an A for section 1, even if they have an attendance in the same class.
Yeah, and they're both like the same price.
Is it a
They're
campus
basically
thing?
the same
Is
thing.
this something like-
Yeah.
That's a campus thing because I changed dates and Canvas, when I changed dates, it actually showed that people had not even turned in the assignments, even though they already had grades for the assignment.
Right, okay, thank you, man.
That is beyond, unfortunately, my control.